I did everything they told me to, found my passion, quit my soul-crushing job, started my purpose-driven business, created the Instagram account, told my story, shared my journey, posted the sunset meditations and the gratitude journals and the manifestation techniques that I became the person I was meant to be. And now, I'm more exhausted, more confused, and more lost than I've ever been in my life. What if we've been sold a beautiful lie? What if the very thing you were told would set you free, finding your purpose, is precisely what's making you miserable? What if your obsession with discovering your why is the very thing keeping you from living a meaningful life? Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung saw this coming nearly a century ago, and his explanation isn't just shocking. It might be the most liberating thing you'll ever hear. The idea of purpose has transformed dramatically throughout human history. For the ancients, purpose was cosmic, predetermined by fate, the gods, or the natural order. Aristotle called it telos, the inherent purpose of a thing, like a seed's purpose to become a tree. In religious traditions, purpose became vocation, a divine calling, something assigned by God. The monk in his monastery, the nun in her convent. Their purpose was clear, externally granted, unquestioned. The Industrial Revolution changed everything. Purpose became productivity. Your worth measured by your output, your role in the great machine of progress. Then came the 20th century and the birth of self-help. Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, Norman Vincent Peale. Purpose became something you could discover through positive thinking, goal setting, and visualization. But it was the digital age that transformed purpose into a full-blown obsession. Simon Sinek told us to start with why. Tony Robbins promised we could awaken the giant within. Gary Vaynerchuk insisted we crush it by monetizing our passions. Purpose wasn't just something to have. It became something to broadcast, to brand, to sell. The statistics tell the story. 86% of millennials report feeling intense pressure to discover their true purpose. The self-help industry has ballooned to over $13 billion annually. Find Your Purpose returns 2.3 billion Google results. Meanwhile, burnout rates among purpose-driven professionals, therapists, nonprofit workers, creatives, coaches, entrepreneurs have reached epidemic levels. As philosopher Byung-Chul Han warns in The Burnout Society, we've become achievement subjects, self-exploiting in the name of fulfillment, working ourselves to exhaustion in service of our supposed calling, that we didn't just want purpose. We were told we owed it to ourselves and to the algorithm. Your purpose wasn't just your reason for being. It became your content strategy, your personal brand, your ticket to relevance in a crowded digital landscape. And if you haven't found it yet, well, clearly, you're just not looking hard enough. I should be happy, my client whispers. I'm finally doing what I'm meant to do. So why do I feel empty inside? This question echoes across countless therapy sessions. The psychological mechanisms behind purpose-related suffering are powerful and insidious. First, there's what I call the tyranny of potential. The belief that if you're not living your purpose, you're wasting your life. Every day becomes a referendum on whether you're fulfilling your destiny or squandering your gifts. The weight is crushing. Then there's identity fusion, when your purpose becomes your entire identity. The yoga teacher who can no longer separate herself from her practice. The entrepreneur whose self-worth rises and falls with his company's valuation. The writer who doesn't know who she is when she's not writing. Social media has transformed purpose into performance. Your journey must be not only meaningful, but photogenic. Your transformation not only authentic, but algorithm-friendly. Your purpose not only fulfilling to live, but inspiring for others to consume. And beneath it all lurks the arrival fallacy. The mistaken belief that once you find your purpose, you'll finally feel whole, content, and at peace. Once I find it, I'll be happy. Spoiler alert, you won't. Because purpose isn't a destination. It's not something you find once and forever. Consider these real stories, with details changed for privacy. Maya, a corporate lawyer who quit to open a yoga studio, now spends 80% of her time on marketing and accounting, and feels guilty for resenting the very dream she sacrificed everything to build. James, a nonprofit founder tackling climate change, privately admits he fantasizes about getting a mindless retail job where he wouldn't carry the weight of the world's problems. Zoe, an artist who monetized her passion, now freezes with anxiety before every brushstroke, hearing the imagined critiques of her 30,000 followers. The cognitive dissonance is deafening. I'm finally living my purpose. So why am I miserable? Purpose has become a mirage in the desert, always shimmering on the horizon, never quite reached. A treadmill that speeds up the faster you run. A prison disguised as freedom. What if your purpose isn't missing, but suffocating you? In the early 20th century, while Freud was exploring sexuality and childhood trauma, his brilliant protege Carl Gustav Jung was peering into something far more mysterious: the spiritual crisis of modern humanity. Jung wasn't just a psychiatrist. He was an explorer of the unconscious, a cartographer of the human soul. After his famous break with Freud in 1913, Jung experienced what today we might call a psychotic break, but what he recognized as a necessary descent into his own unconscious. For 6 years, he documented his visions and inner experiences in the Red Book, a manuscript so personal it wasn't published until 2009, nearly 50 years after his death. What emerged was a radically different understanding of the human psyche. Jung saw beyond the rational mind into the rich wilderness of archetypes, symbols, and the collective unconscious, the shared inheritance of humanity's psychological evolution, and he identified something crucial about modern suffering. About a third of my cases, he wrote, suffered from no clinically definable neurosis, but from the senselessness and emptiness of their lives. This can be described as the general neurosis of our time. Jung didn't see this emptiness as a failure to find purpose. He saw it as a misunderstanding of what purpose even is. While most therapists were offering techniques to adjust to society, Jung was questioning society itself. While self-help gurus were selling 5-step programs to happiness, Jung was inviting people into the mysterious depths of their own psyches that he didn't offer an easy fix. He offered a descent into shadow, into complexity, into wholeness. And his perspective on finding your purpose isn't just different from our modern obsession, it's shocking. To understand Jung's shocking explanation, we must first grasp his model of the psyche, a model far more complex than the self-help industry's simplistic find your why. A. The ego's mistake for Jung. What we typically call purpose is largely an ego construct, a desperate attempt to control fate, avoid chaos, and manufacture meaning where it cannot be manufactured. The ego, our conscious identity, craves certainty. It wants a clean, coherent story. I am here to do X. It seeks clarity, direction, stability. But the self, capital S, Jung's term for the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, operates differently. It speaks in symbols, dreams, synchronicities. It contains multitudes. It embraces contradiction. The ego wants to find purpose like finding a destination on Google Maps. The self experiences purpose as an unfolding mystery, a conversation with fate, a dance with the unknown. The decisive question for man, Jung wrote, is he related to something infinite or not? Not has he found his purpose, but is he in relationship with something greater than himself? B. The call of a shadow. Here comes Jung's first shocking insight. Your relentless search for purpose often represents a flight from yourself rather than a journey toward yourself. Jung's concept of a shadow is crucial here. The shadow contains everything we've repressed, denied, or rejected about ourselves, qualities, desires, and truths too threatening for our conscious identity to integrate. Finding your purpose often becomes a sophisticated way to avoid your shadow. The corporate executive who quits to start a spiritual retreat center may be running from his own materialism, still unintegrated. The academic who abandons tenure to become an artist may be fleeing the parts of herself that crave structure and validation. The shadow doesn't disappear when ignored. It grows stronger. It sabotages. It emerges in projection, in criticism of others, in mysterious depressions and anxieties. True individuation Jung's term for becoming whole, requires shadow work. Not transcending your darkness, but integrating it. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, Jung wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. See, the archetype trap, another dimension of Jung's shocking explanation. Many purpose seekers confuse archetypal energies with personal destiny. Jung identified universal patterns in the human psyche. The healer, the warrior, the creator, the sage, archetypes that appear across cultures and throughout history. Modern purpose-seeking often involves identifying with an archetype. I am a healer. I'm a creator. I am a leader. But Jung warned against over-identifying with any archetype. When the ego identifies with an archetypal energy, it experiences inflation, a temporary sense of grandiosity, specialness, even messianic purpose. The crash is inevitable. The archetype is transpersonal, bigger than any individual. When reality sets in, when a healer realizes she can't heal everyone, when the creator faces creative blocks, the inflated ego collapses into depression, unworthiness, confusion. This explains the common purpose seeker cycle: euphoric discovery, manic action, disillusionment, emptiness, search for new purpose. The unlived life now, for Jung's most devastating insight. Your misery doesn't come from lacking purpose. It comes from denying the unlived life within you. The unlived life, Jung observed, is a sickness from which human beings suffer everywhere. The parts of yourself you've rejected don't vanish. They haunt you as depression, anxiety, envy, rage. The roads not taken, the quality suppressed, the desires denied, all gather force in your unconscious. Your purpose often becomes a distraction from the inner work required to live all of yourself. The admirable and the shameful, the beautiful and the ugly, the certain and the doubtful. Depression, Jung noted, is like a woman in black. If she has come, don't shoo her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, treat her like a guest, and listen to what she wants to say. But who has time to listen to depression when you're busy pursuing your purpose? The paradox of wholeness. This brings us to Jung's ultimate perspective, crystallized in one of his most radical statements. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. But this becoming isn't about finding a singular purpose. It's about wholeness. I don't aspire to be good, Jung declared. I aspire to be whole. Wholeness includes darkness and light, success and failure, certainty and doubt. It embraces ambiguity, contradiction, mystery. Purpose, in Jung's view, isn't something you find. It's something that emerges when you stop running from yourself and embrace your totality. Here, then, is Jung's shocking explanation for your purpose-related misery. You're not miserable because you haven't found your purpose. You're miserable because you're using purpose to avoid becoming who you really are. Messy, contradictory, gloriously incomplete. Your purpose isn't missing. It's waiting for you to stop searching and start listening. If Jung is right, if our obsession with purpose often represents flight from ourselves rather than authentic becoming, then a crisis becomes inevitable. The collapse comes in many forms. The burnout that leave you bedridden for weeks. The panic attacks that arrive at the height of your success. The creeping sense of emptiness as you achieve everything you thought you wanted. The inexplicable depression that descends when you're living your purpose. Jung called this the night sea journey, a necessary descent into the unconscious. Every spiritual tradition recognizes this passage. Christ in the tomb for 3 days. Jonah in the belly of the whale. Inanna's descent to the underworld, surrendering everything at each gate. The dark night of the soul in Christian mysticism. The ego death of Buddhism. The symptoms are unmistakable. Loss of meaning in previously purposeful activities. Disorientation. Existential dread. Spiritual dryness. A sense of betrayal by life itself. Modern psychology pathologizes this state. Labels it depression, anxiety, burnout. Prescribes medication, pushes through, gets back on track. Jung saw it differently. This collapse isn't a failure. It's an initiation. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate, Jung wrote. That is to say, when the individual remains divided and does not become conscious of his inner contradictions, the world must act out the conflict and be torn into opposite halves. When your conscious purpose collapses, it's not because you chose the wrong one. It's because purpose itself, as you've conceived it, was too small for the totality of who you are. This is where purpose goes to die, so that something truer can be born. But beware the quick fixes, the spiritual bypassing that rushes back to the light. The new guru promising a better purpose. The rebranding of your identity for version 2.0. The only way out is through. As Jung wrote. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. If the modern fixation on finding your purpose leads to spiritual inflation, shadow avoidance, and inevitable collapse, what is the alternative? Jung offers not a destination, but a path. Not a purpose, but a process. Not answers, but a relationship with the questions themselves. Here is Jung's path to wholeness, translated into practical steps. Step 1. Stop searching. Start listening. The first step is a radical shift from asking, "What should I do?" to what is trying to emerge. This requires developing a different relationship with your unconscious, learning to listen rather than direct, receive rather than control. Jung developed methods for this dialogue. Active imagination, a contemplative practice where you engage with the figures and symbols of your unconscious through writing, art, or inner dialogue. Begin by focusing on a mood, emotion, or dream image, then allow it to develop autonomously, engaging with whatever emerges. Dream work. Jung saw dreams not as wishes or fears, but as compensations, showing what conscious awareness is missing. Keep a dream journal. Look for recurring symbols. Ask not, "What does this mean?" but "What is this showing me about myself?" Synchronicities. Meaningful coincidences that Jung saw as a-causal connecting principles. Moments when the inner and outer worlds align. When you notice strange coincidences, ask what symbolic meaning they might hold. As Jung wrote. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Step 2. Befriend your shadow. The shadow contains not just your negative qualities, but often your vitality, spontaneity, and authenticity, sacrificed at the altar of social acceptance. Begin by asking, where am I over-identified with my purpose persona? The healer who can't admit needing help. The spiritual teacher who can't acknowledge materialism. The activist who denies their own aggression. Jung's guidance. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. Exercise. Write a letter from your shadow self. What does the part of you that you've rejected want you to know? What qualities are you denying? What truths are you avoiding? Remember, integration doesn't mean acting out shadow impulses. It means acknowledging them, learning from them, incorporating their energy ethically. Step 3. Embrace the tension of opposites. Jung believed psychological growth comes from holding tensions, not resolving them prematurely. His concept of the transcendent function emerges from a union of opposites. When conscious and unconscious positions are held in creative tension until a third, previously unimaginable, position emerges. In purpose terms, hold the tension between ambition and surrender, creation and rest, visibility and privacy, teaching others and remaining a student. Jung, the greater the tension, the greater the potential. Great energy springs from a correspondingly great tension of opposites. Practice. Replace either / or thinking with both / and awareness. Instead of "Should I focus on my career or my relationships?" ask, "How might my career and relationships inform and enrich each other?" Step 4. Let go of grand narratives. The ego loves heroic stories. I was born to change the world. Everything happened for a reason. My suffering prepared me for my purpose. These narratives can provide temporary comfort, but often become straitjackets, forcing life's complexity into simplistic arcs. Jung advocated a more modest, immediate approach to meaning. Replace my purpose is to underscore with today. I am called to focus on micro meanings, the significance in a single conversation, the purpose in washing dishes mindfully, the meaning in a moment of connection with a stranger. Jung, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This becoming happens moment by moment, not in grand declarations of purpose. Step 5. Cultivate sacred indifference. Jung distinguished between attachment, which creates suffering, and engagement, which creates meaning. Sacred indifference doesn't mean not caring. It means caring deeply while releasing attachment to outcomes, recognizing that the ego's agenda is always smaller than the self's unfolding. Jung, free will is the ability to do gladly what I must do. Practice weekly unplanned day. No goals, no optimization, no purpose seeking. Simply respond to what arises. Follow impulses. Notice synchronicities. Ask, what wants to happen through me today, rather than, what do I want to make happen today? Step 6. Re-enchant the ordinary. Jung believed modern humanity suffers from disenchantment, the loss of the sacred dimension in everyday life. The purpose obsession often seeks meaning in the extraordinary, the big impact, the massive platform, the revolutionary change. Jung found the numinous in the ordinary, the patterns in nature, the symbols in dreams, the archetypes in fairy tales, the meaning in symptoms. Practice contemplative attention to daily activities, finding the sacred in washing dishes, commuting, waiting in line, recognizing that meaning isn't manufactured, it's perceived. Jung, the gods have become diseases. The sacred doesn't disappear. It returns as symptoms, as suffering, as the very discontent that drives your purpose seeking. This isn't about giving up on meaning. It's about letting meaning find you through cracks, breakdowns, and quiet moments of surrender. It's about recognizing that purpose isn't something you find once and forever, but something that finds you again and again in ever-changing forms. As Jung wrote, the meaning of my existence is that life has addressed a question to me, or conversely, I myself am a question which is addressed to the world, and I must communicate my answer, for otherwise I am dependent upon the world's answer. Theory is one thing, lived experience is another. Here are 3 real stories, details altered for privacy, of individuals who found liberation through Jung's approach. Michael, 42, former tech after building a purpose-driven company valued at $300 million. Michael experienced debilitating panic attacks. No amount of success filled the emptiness he felt. Therapy revealed he'd been fleeing his own vulnerability, using achievement as armor. I stepped down, moved to a small town, started gardening. Everyone thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. But in the soil, watching things grow and die, I found something I never found in spreadsheets: peace. Not because gardening is my purpose, but because it reconnected me with cycles, with limits, with a life I've been too busy to notice. Today, Michael consults part-time and spends hours in silent contemplation of his garden. I don't have a purpose anymore, he says. I have a life. Amara, 35, former professional artist after building a successful career selling her paintings. Amara found herself paralyzed by creative block. Each brushstroke became an anxiety-inducing performance for her 50,000 Instagram followers. I completely stopped showing my work, deactivated social media, started painting things I knew would never sell. Ugly things, disturbing things, childish things. I painted my nightmares. I painted my shame. I painted my rage. This shadow work on canvas broke open something in her. I realized I'd been using being an artist to avoid the parts of myself that didn't fit that identity. Now I create when and what I want. Sometimes I go months without painting. Sometimes I paint for 12 hours straight. There's no brand, no purpose, no trajectory, just an ongoing conversation with my whole self. David, 53, former pastor after 20 years leading a growing congregation. David experienced a spiritual crisis that Jung would recognize as the encounter with the shadow. I realized I'd been using God language to avoid my own darkness. My certainty, my purpose, my calling, They were defenses against doubt, complexity, and limitation. David left the church, a decision that cost him friends, community, and identity. I spent a year walking in forests, not praying, not seeking, just walking. Gradually, I found God again, not in sermons or scripture, but in silence, in questions, in the faces of strangers, in the pain of loss. Today, David leads wilderness retreats, helping others navigate their own spiritual unraveling. I don't help people find their purpose, he says. I help them lose it so they can find something more honest, more humble, and ultimately more sacred. The common thread through these stories isn't finding a better purpose. It's releasing the need to have one at all and discovering that meaning emerges precisely when we stop demanding it conform to our expectations. For centuries, we've navigated by fixed points, the North Star, the unwavering purpose, the clear direction. Jung invites us to consider a different metaphor, life not as a journey toward a fixed destination, but as an improvisation, a conversation, a dance with fate. Nietzsche, who profoundly influenced Jung, captured this in his concept of a more fatty love of fate. My formula for greatness in a human being is a more fatty, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. This isn't passive resignation. It's active embrace of life as it unfolds, not as you planned it, but as it actually presents itself. Poet Rainer Maria Rilke, another influence on Jung, wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." And Mary Oliver, in her poem, The Summer Day, asks the question that perhaps matters more than "What is my purpose?" Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Note the emphasis. Your life is wild. Your life is precious. What will you do with it? Not what were you born to do, but what will you choose to do with what you've been given? This new myth doesn't ask you to find your North Star. It invites you to become a constellation, a pattern emerging from seemingly random points of light, visible only when you step back far enough to see the whole. Life as jazz improvisation rather than classical performance. Not reading sheet music, but responding to what emerges, moment by moment, in conversation with others, with circumstances, with your own evolving awareness, A.S. Rilke wrote. Perhaps everything terrible is, in its deepest being, something helpless that wants help from us. Your purpose isn't waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be created, not once and forever, but again and again, in each moment of presence, each act of courage, each gesture of love. Remember the woman from our opening scene? The one who did everything right, found her passion, quit her job, built her purpose-driven brand, and ended up more lost than ever. Here she is now, a year after her purpose identity collapsed. The strangest thing happened when I stopped looking for my purpose. I started listening to my life. Not the life I thought I should have, but the life that was actually here. And gradually, the right things began to find me. Some days I still feel lost. Some days I still wonder if I'm wasting my potential. But those thoughts don't consume me anymore. They're just thoughts passing through. I've stopped trying to be extraordinary. I've started trying to be whole. And in that wholeness, messy, contradictory, unresolved, I found something better than purpose. I found myself, as Carl Jung wrote, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Your misery wasn't the absence of purpose. It was the absence of wholeness, the refusal to embrace all that you are, all that you feel, all that you know and don't know. Your liberation doesn't come from finding the perfect purpose. It comes from the courage to exist without one, to stand in the mystery, to dance with uncertainty, to participate in life without knowing where it leads. This doesn't mean abandoning meaning. It means discovering that meaning isn't something you manufacture. It's something you perceive in ordinary moments, in painful truths, in the quiet voice beneath your purpose-driven anxiety. The question isn't, what is my purpose? The question is, what part of myself am I ready to stop hiding? Because in that revelation, in that moment of honest self-recognition, you may find something far more valuable than purpose. You may find liberation.